So in the 20th century, there was this huge confusion on what EMR, electromagnetic radiation, or light, was composed of. So to understand the entire story, let's go back to the mid-19th century to something called the ultraviolet catastrophe, where physicists thought that any hot black body, a hypothetical object that could absorb, emit, but not reflect all wavelengths of EMR, would emit an unlimited amount of high-energy radiation, such as UV light. For example, a hot stove emitting a red color while absorbing radiation from a flame. Because of this thought, the hypothetical conclusion was that there would be no darkness, like even us humans would glow. Then comes Max Planck, who proposed that energy from matter and radiation comes in packets of energy called quantas. Planck's proposition gave numerical values for the transfer of energy, primarily through the equation E is equal to hv. So his claim was pretty radical, and people just needed more evidence just to believe that energy could be transferred in quantas. So in 1887, an experiment was modeled to support Planck's hypothesis. In the experiment, ultraviolet radiation was shown on a metal surface, and experimentally, electrons were ejected from the metal surface, and this is known as the photoelectric effect. So there were three key takeaways from this experiment. Firstly, each metal had a certain frequency that the radiation had to equal or pass for the ejection of an electron. So think of me as a very weak metal. If someone were to punch me, then I would definitely flinch. But if you were to punch a bodybuilder who could be thought of as a strong metal, then you would need much more energy, synonymous with higher frequency, to induce the same response. Another observation was that if the frequency of radiation is high enough, an electron from the metal is immediately ejected despite the intensity, which refers to the amount of light. The third observation was that the kinetic energy of ejected electrons is directly correlated with the frequency of the radiation. Alright, I know those words probably made no sense whatsoever, but just give me a chance to explain. So for the first point, Einstein saved us once again and reasoned that EMR can be regarded as particles called photons. So it's as if an object is getting hit by a particle, and that energy is being used to eject the metal's electrons from orbit. And the minimum amount of energy to eject an electron is called the work function. So there's a minimum threshold frequency that has to get passed in order for an electron to get ejected. So moving on to the second point, think about the intensity of light as the amount of photons. So a more intense light would eject more electrons. It's like a game of zombie tag. More people who are it are theoretically going to catch more people. If you look at the equation shown on the screen, it can be modeled as a linear line with a Planck constant slope. To elaborate, if you were to increase the frequency of the incident radiation, the kinetic energy of the ejected electrons would also increase because the work function of the metal stays the same regardless. So if you're ever walking on a sunny day, just think of it as a big collection of bombardments.